Hey everybody, Breakthrough Health and Life Coach Glenn Hattem here. I'm here with my good friend Jon Ley, who's up in Canada and on the road to a unique offering that he'll share a little bit about at the end. So I'm just going to build a suspense there. But he's got a unique herbal product line that he'll share a little bit about with you at the end here of our call. But I first want to say that I met Jon. God, what is it? How long? It's been about has it been a decade now already? Have we already stacked that up?
2015, I think, was
Yeah.
was in
Okay. So
Sarasota. 2016 in Sarasota.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So
I remember.
not fully there, but yeah, we were I was doing this advanced detoxification cellular regeneration course with Dr. Robert Morse, and after just going through the whole miracle detox program that he had, I had just gone down the rabbit hole for myself of understanding a little bit more about the healing processes of the body and the curiosity, not just for myself, but with my clients. And you and I connected. I remember had a conversation. You were there actually leading a business course there,
Yeah.
which I was impacted by that. So I think after somewhere in the intermission, you and I connected, and we've been good friends and been in conversation ever since. And always each iteration of our reconnecting, there's just we've both gone through some evolutions and come to the next chapter of our lives of transforming. And so it's been a lot of fun as buds being on the journey together. And I'd love for you to maybe share with people what you're up to in the world. And then I always like to, with folks, kind of jump back in time and see how you as a youngster observed the world, how you were in relating to as entrepreneur. Was that spirit there? Were you the straight A student, or were you the rebel? Like, how did you like the box and the conformity, and how did you deal with authority, and then how did your path start to unfold? So that's how I like to do these talks here, just giving our audience an opportunity to understand how you got wired a certain way, and what guiding principles are helping you and serving at a high level. Because the folks that I like to interview are folks that are really operating from a place of service, and that service comes from a healthy relationship with oneself, on self-mastery, and it's just unique to hear how each of us has these different but similar methods that we've somehow come across from different teachers and different courses along the way. So maybe Jon, maybe sharing just a little bit about what you're up to in the world today. Our audience gets an opportunity to kind of know who you are and what you stand for.
Yeah. Well, I always like to think of it as like kind of a evolutionary process, so not kind of a final destination. So, and currently what I'm doing right now is I have a health practice. I'm a health practitioner, and I have a medicinal herbal product line. Then I work with people up to late stage cancer all over North America. I actually have clients around the globe that I've been doing for the last 8 years, and really about bringing awareness into some of the habits that we have that have led to the conditions that we're experiencing that people aren't aware of. And a lot of the work that I do is about having people do quote unquote experiments with trying out different things for a period of time, not coming from so much like a dogmatic standpoint of like, hey, this is the way, or this cures this. It's more of, hey, try this out. We'll maybe say, hey, try out this different way of eating, or we're going to experiment with some of these non-toxic medicinal herbal formulas to work. And then you see what you discover from going and doing that. So people try that on for a period of time, maybe a month, 2 months, and then they say go back to doing the old habits, and they start to notice things that they've never noticed before that they were doing. And my intention is that, okay, when you have that piece of awareness, that you stick with that going forward. So I have clients that I work with, like I said, up to late stage cancer, Parkinson's. And I could tell you a lot of really cool stories of people that have turned around conditions that are impossible, or Sometimes I work with clients and it's, you know, helping them. Gosh, you know, I had someone I was working with not too long ago, and it was kind of helping them through the dying process. You know, they were young, and it was obviously that they weren't going to turn around the condition, and got to a point where it was like, hey, you know, how do you make peace with where you're at right now? And so you're not fighting or struggling, but rather, you know, living in a place of acceptance. This guy in his 20s, and he had a leg amputated. He's with moved to Canada, and he had a wife who she's 21, had a newborn child that was probably like a year old or so. He
Mhm.
didn't speak any English. He spoke Punjabi, and you know, he had a motorcycle accident in someplace in the Punjab up in northern India. And when they put his leg back together, it never healed, and it developed cancer. They had to amputate it, and so he's in Canada. You know, just an impossible situation. He's just not going to make it through this. It was pretty clear because it metastasized and tumors gone through his body. And it was interesting. His wife's family was saying, "Oh, he's dead. You know, let him go. You know, we'll set you up with the next person here." It was brutal having these conversations. But you know, it was like, hey, because so rather than fighting it, you know, this is obviously it looks like, and obviously you know, I'm not going to say, hey, you know, you're out of here, but it was more of like, you, what do you think, sort of thing. And the guy actually was very elated or ecstatic by the time he was ready to go. The very joyous place, even though he was in tremendous amount of pain. He exited in really good shape for going in. It kind of set his wife and kid up for like the next step in life as a result of that. So actually heard from him the other day, and you know, working with another family member right now around that. So so I do that sort of work with people. So I have a lot of people come to me who have a variety of different conditions where they've gone and seen their doctor, their naturopath, and they're not getting results with the condition. And then I'll work with them through the next steps to be able to get better results. And like I said, I have a very a really high quality line of medicinal herbs that I've worked with and developed over a number of years that works extremely well, stronger than what you can buy at retail level. You know, the next step of what I'm doing with my business is actually bringing that to retail right now. The market for those products with extensive clinical use and proven results with them. So that's what I'm doing. And then I have other clients that I work with where what they want to do is they want to go beyond just treating symptoms. And so where they've been able to ascertain is that, oh, you know, maybe the reason I'm sick is because I'm not having enough fun in life, or, you know, the relationship that I have is kind of a mess, and the stress that they're experiencing from that is really exacerbating what symptoms that they have. And we can actually see that from monitoring things like blood work on a regular level, on a regular basis, as well as things like blood pressure. So we'll actually check in, and we can see stuff historically over time. And then what I'll do, because they're ready to actually work on some of the underlying issues as to why they're sick in the first place. And so, you know, we'll work on that, not necessarily trying to fix it, but going towards the things that give them pleasure, give them joy in life. And so that's a really big component. So a lot of my clients are going, and so it's more life coaching work that I'm doing with people, where I'll work with people not just over a few months, but sometimes I have clients I've worked with for years for helping them move towards their goals and things that they that really light them up in life. And so that's kind of another branch, another arm with the direction which the work is that I'm doing right now, the way it's been going. So
Yeah, I'm assuming, yeah, when you get into looking at what's going on with someone, you know, just not just in their biology and their physiology, but you're looking at, you know, what are the contributing factors? You're always hunting for what's at the root of this. What am I getting a hit on that's going on with this person here versus what they're maybe just communicating as far as symptoms?
I had a lady I was working with, this story years ago. This is way before COVID, and she'd come originally to me wanting to lose weight. Just kind of give you an example of the work that I do. So she wanted to lose weight, and the first time I worked with her is, I don't know, 2015 or so, and we changed her diet, worked with some, you know, natural medicinal herbs, And, she was having like a bowel movement every few days. We got it up to going every 2 to 3 days sort of thing. I can go a little bit into the background of that, that piece of awareness around health I can get to if you want. But anyhow, I was working with her and she lost 24 pounds in probably about a month and a half. And she's very happy, obviously. So, she learned some really cool things going forward. But as the case with weight loss is that it comes back, 99 point whatever percent of people, they put the weight back on. And, 2019, she comes back. And so she's put the weight back on and she's wanting to lose weight again. And I said, okay, well, we knew what worked. So let's start off with that. And so I start working with her. And so she's losing a little bit of weight. And then she starts to kind of drift off a little bit. And I was, and she's not making her calls or she's rescheduling them, that sort of thing. And eventually I get on the line, it's about 3 weeks later. And, she hasn't really lost any weight, or she did in the beginning and she put it back on. And I says, well, I noticed something here is that you know what the right thing is to do. And when you do it, it works, but it's clear that you're not doing it.
Right.
I said, are we even working on the right goal here? And she says, what do you mean? And I says, well, should we even be working on the weight loss thing? Because it seems like you're not getting results. You're having the same thing happen. And so she had to really think about it. And then she came out and says, well, and she turns out her position is she's working as a business development representative, and she's working for a company that does the dinosaur exhibits, for museums or exhibitions, that sort of thing. Right. And they do these big, multi-million prefab models, T-Rex, Brontosaurus that you've seen in museums. Huh. There are a number of the one of the companies that in North America that does that. And so her job for the company was to go and travel around North America, meet with curators, teams, that sort of thing. And then she would do a proposal, and the proposals weren't these, they were a thick book proposal sort of thing, because these are multi-million-dollar projects. And so she would do this, and she's on the plane all the time. When she's in Vancouver, she's having to commute 1 hour a day each way in traffic to her office. Yeah. And then, she'd have to do these huge proposals. And then she's having to do customer service after that. And it was about a 50-person company, and she's the main salesperson for that. And she's just run ragged. Okay. So she has no time for self-care. And so she'd be eating like, crappy food in airports, that sort of thing. No time for exercise. I said, well, what about the goal of you getting more time for work, time for more self-care? And she says, well, that would be great. I said, we can work on the weight loss, but you're just not, you're obviously not taking the actions around that. And we have to look at maybe how you can create more time first before we get into that. And so we did a brainstorming session, so where she started to look at, okay, how can I get, how can I free up more time? And I'd worked in sales for many years prior. And I said, do you even need to be in the office that much time? Because I know in sales, typically where you make money is when you're talking to your clients, not so much doing the admin work or whatnot. Right. And she said, well, I only need to be in the office really 1 day a week on Friday. And I said, okay, great. So maybe you can work from home. Remember, this before COVID. Yeah. What about hiring another sales rep to go and do the admin work to free you up? And she freaked out at that, because the company is always having problems with cash flow, where they're just not getting enough money. And the owner of the company was so stressed out around money because their clients wouldn't pay them on time, that he was afraid to hire anyone else. And the company culture was very toxic as a result of that, because people are overworked, they didn't have enough time, and there was just no freedom to communicate with the owner. So I said, well, let's do this. I've negotiated with a lot of owners. Let's sit down and do a proposal that he'd go for. And so we really dug into that, what he would go for. And she had the balls. She went out and presented to him, and he went for it. Right. And part of the deal was that she could now only go, part of the deal was so she could work in the office 1 day a week. So she cut out or freed up 8 hours of her week just in her commute time. So if she did that for starters, and they hired a junior rep, because we actually showed how it could increase the bottom line of the company, and it freed up probably, I don't know, another 8 to 10 hours a week. That's like another 16 hours that we freed up for her that she used for self-care, and that solved the problem. But it was scary for her to look at, you see? Yeah, so for making that, going for the things that she wanted to. And so anyways, that solved the problem with her around her health. But if you see, we could just go and try and treat the symptoms over, but that's just not doing anything. So it was really helping her to get her life in order, for doing things. So I find now that's more and more of what people really need, because I think a lot in the coaching industry is that, we don't really take time to really listen and find out, what's going on with our clients. And sometimes just working on that goal that they think that if I got that sorted out, that would handle everything, might not be the thing that they need to. There's other pieces that need to get handled beforehand before that can even happen. And so I'm finding
some pieces need to be moved and set up, and then some internal blocks need to be removed as well too.
Yeah.
But it's not just the mechanics of like a simple procedure that's going to change everything.
No, good grief. I mean, I have a client he's starting a coaching practice, and he was in between Korea and Los Angeles. And he's trying to get something going. And, his relationship with his relationship is an absolute nightmare right now. Okay. What he's dealing with, the stories are like, holy crap. And he just wants to, make money is like to solve that problem. But it's almost like, okay, if he made a lot of money, he thinks he could throw it at it, that would sort everything out, but it's just not happening. And I said, if your relationship with your partner is, you're kind of turned upside down, inside out, you don't, that takes up a lot of your processing power to be able to work on your business and have some clean air, to really focus on that.
I mean, I know that from having been in a toxic relationship where my energy is tied up managing, and manicuring, that's not, that also those creative juices, those insights, and self-regulation, like all that stuff's thrown out of whack.
Exactly. And he keeps on wanting to go back to it because it's so painful to look at the relationship. But and we have to maybe chase that goal with that, but he's now come around to realizing, well, wait a second, I can't just do that. It just doesn't seem to work. And so now we're actually addressing what the real stuff is with him, and he's learning to make peace with it. I could get into the whole kind of how I'm working with him around it, but often that's the case, is that we need to look at the underlying stuff, and most of I find is about kind of listening. And there's a reason why people are in the situation that they're in, and I see there's a rightness to it. Potentially we put ourselves into situations, and if we can get why we've done that or what's right about it, instead of trying to fight it or trying to push it away, it's more of like surrendering, and there's something to learn from that. And it's almost like we learn that piece, then something else can happen, or something else can open up in life as a result. So
yeah, the surrendering piece is, subsequent to first, like I always tell people, it's like you fight the good fight, and then you get exhausted enough from that, and then you realize you got to kind of surrender to what's wanting to happen, what's wanting to be revealed. And that's just, I don't know how to maybe you could speed it up, and the rightness.
Well, here's the thing. There's a study by the University of Cincinnati, and this has been repeated a number of times.
Okay.
I can't remember what year it was, but what they did is they had a large group of people, and they said, okay, we're going to track all the things that people worry about, that are scared of, that are fearful of, that really take up a lot of your mental processing power. Okay. Yeah. So we organize our lives around stuff that we don't want to happen, or we're afraid of happening, or,
yes,
and so people say, well, I'll make a lot of money, or I'll do something that I don't like to do to avoid the boogeyman or having a rainy day sort of thing.
Energy is
And,
not being directed towards what you actually want to create. It's
or
being
that you,
directed towards what you're trying to avoid.
yeah. So, or doing stuff that you don't like to do, right? Thinking, well, I won't survive if I don't make this money, and it,
Have to do
usually,
this versus what will light me up.
right, exactly. And of course, when you do stuff that you enjoy, you have more energy. You've got, more available for the people or for what you're doing. So anyways, what they did is they tracked the study, and it was very interesting. The results is over a number of years, and they actually looked at, so they went through all the stuff that people were afraid, fearful of, scared of, and they found, I think in the study was like 10% of all the stuff that people worry about actually comes true. And then of the 10%, something like 5 to 7% was not even that big a deal. So they were able to handle it very easily or better. So it was like 3 to 5% of all the stuff that we worry about actually ever happens. And that's crazy, right? So, because that's like, we spend a huge amount of our life energy and force, money, time, that sort of thing, resources, trying to, for stuff that's never going to happen, or
You're
that's not
working
even.
out all this bullshit that's never even, like, what a waste of time and energy and resources.
Well, that's
And
the value of working with someone, because when you can actually see it. So this stuff kind of bounces around in our heads, unexamined, you could say. And when you can voice it, or when you can say it, what happens is that, and you can see it clearly, then we can start to see, okay, is this real? Does it hold water or not? Is this really what's going on? And if we can start to see that, so when you're working with someone, if you can have them start to see that, well, maybe this isn't real or not, then that can disappear, and everything around it can drop. So, for example, I was working with a guy who's a smoker. A lot of people try and quit smoking, very difficult to do.
Yep.
And, a lot, when people are smoking, they're like, well, I shouldn't be doing this. I shouldn't be smoking. I'm a bad person, sort of thing.
This is negative versus my body.
Right.
This is the best tool, ally at the moment.
Right. And then of course you see I'm not a smoker, but anyhow, you see on the cigarette packages, it will have like the skull and crossbones, or the necrotic lung, with the cancer and all that sort of stuff, almost like a hex. And I said, well, actually, if you go back in time, back to the 1960s and 50s, everyone smoked. Right. And even doctors supported that. And look where those people are now. So a lot of those people are living to 190 years old. So can we really say that, hey, this is, smoking produces lung cancer? Well, it turns out it's like 50-50. It's not this thing that's like hey, this is going to happen for sure. We just don't know really. And, one of the tools that I use in my healthcare practice, something called Iridology, where I can take pictures of someone's iris, and I can see the relative, there's a pattern, a formation in the eye. It's determines something called your constitution, or your genetic strength. And you can see a strong constitution body. You can actually see as someone has good genetics. Anyways, this guy who's a smoker, the guy had bomber genetics. Okay, he had a really, really strong genetics. We can also see how much inflammation, or areas of inflammation in the body. And the guy didn't have any issues with his lungs. And I said, probably, now I can't say for sure, but probably, you're, from what I've seen from looking at you, your chances of developing lung cancer are probably going to be relatively low. Now, I don't know. I can't say that for certain, but anyhow, all the stress that he had around that started to drop. Okay, because he'd made up this story in his head. Okay, I'm a bad person, that sort of thing. And it's much easier to change a habit when you're not fighting it. Okay, when you're not struggling against it. The other thing I said to him, I said, well, listen, sometimes the stress is worse than the habit itself. So the stress that you have is maybe worse than the smoking, okay, as far as the damage that it does to the body. And so maybe some ways, I mean, this is kind of a mind, a mind flip, because we don't hear this in our society, right? Dr. Gabor Mate did an interview with Russell Brand a number of years ago, he's a very famous addiction specialist,
Yeah, Gabriel. Yeah.
Gabor Mate. And anyways, he used to work downtown East Side Vancouver, which is really notorious for heroin addicts, people strewn out, needles everywhere, sort of thing. On it's just the one chunk of Canada that's really really prevalent. And he was working in a methadone clinic, and he saw with the heroin addicts there that that if they weren't smoking, then they might be dead already. Or sorry, doing heroin. So if they weren't doing heroin,
Yeah.
they might have died, because the stress would have killed them before the heroin did. So what he would say to the heroin addicts is, thank God you found heroin, because it probably kept you alive.
Right.
Interesting take on it. But and then of course, obviously over time you might want to develop habits. You don't have to do that to develop deal with stress. But
the addiction is the issue. It's not the drug. It's that we've developed these relationships to stress. We have this storyline that's going on that it's the perception of the perception, that I'm negating that I'm having this negative experience of this thing. And that's where, like the whole saying of like, someone could be having a great experience with the same thing going on, and you're having a miserable experience over here of it. And
sure. It's how you perceive the situation.
how you're perceiving something.
But what we did with this guy with the smoking, as soon as he got, oh, I'm okay, I'm not a bad person, or this is just a coping strategy that I have right now. His stress level went from like here to like down here. Okay. So his symptoms and how he felt, more energy, more vitality, went right up. That was a huge thing for the guy, to stop beating himself up about it. And also much easier to drop something or make something, when you're not trying to conceal it or hide it or beat yourself up about it, going forward. So it's a big deal for him, a very, very big deal.
Well, I can hear it. Everyone can hear you're passionate about this work and the service and really helping people flip the switch and see a different side to what they're stuck in. I'm curious how you ended up on this path and what drives you, why you're wired so much to this type of in your own self-exploration, and then carrying this over to really serving people at a deep level, whether it's I think even Dr. Morris even kind of said this years back, just about don't get on somebody else's roller coaster, don't bring them on yours. But like maybe someone's this person's got this constitution here. He had reflected to me that I had a really strong constitution, and that sometimes people are meant to die like right now, and like
their time. Well, we all have to die at some point.
Who are you to get in the way of someone's like pace and path? And so like when you to show up the way you do with people, to be present to what's wanting to happen, and what's in alignment for them. Like, I guess, how did you end up in this type of kind of wild work?
God, so that's a big story. I never thought I would be doing this. It was I had so I've worked with some very extraordinary mentors, some really great people, and I've done a lot of personal development work over the years. As we were mentioning earlier on, I did a number of years with Landmark and shamanistic, all sorts of different things that I've done in the past. And there was another piece of the puzzle that I hadn't really fully grasped on, which was and it was, I met this guy in Pasadena in Los Angeles, Greater Los Angeles, and a guy called Charles McGall, and he's not around anymore, but he said, what about your connection with your higher self, and starting to tune into that, make that a priority in life. What I mean by that is, or what he meant by that was like your connection with your intuition and following your gut. And I think what mostly happens, we all have this internal voice, but it's easy to follow it when it's convenient, but most people don't. Very few people do it when it's not convenient. It's uncomfortable, when it's very challenging. We don't know how it's going to go. And it brings up all sorts of fear and stuff like that, even though we might hear, take this step or take this action.
Mhm.
And what he'd introduced me is, well, wait, what if we could clear out the parts of us that get in the way of being able to tune into that? And that really interests me, because I'd done a lot of personal development courses and I'd never heard this before, right? Is following your heart, following your intuition, and clearing a space around your heart so that you could have that expression of your heart or your intuition. He called it being a service to creation, which is like, we're really tuned into the universe. And he says, as you clear out more of the parts of yourself that are not loving, that are not neutral, and what he was referring to is things like, the anger, the sadness, the grief, the fear, that sort of thing. And as you clear more of that stuff out, you're just more of a conduit to be able to have that channel open up and that expression to come out in the world. And so he says, your job really in life is very simple. Is our job is just to say yes to the intuition and to say yes. And he says that the universe will handle the other 95%, the logistics. Okay.
Right.
But it's critical to do for you to say yes. And very few people do that when it's challenging. Okay. And that's where the magic starts to come in. And so he says, he introduced me to this path. He says, well, if you're willing to take it on, it's going to be kind of a crash course where, that stuff will start to get cleared out. And, and then I got introduced to, some really other profound mentors, a guy that had been the personal assistant for Werner Erhard, lived with Werner Erhard for 7 years, kind of his like right hand person, you could say, and work very intense with him. Werner Erhard started S training, Landmark. I think something like 1/3 of Silicon Valley has done Landmark and S. But this is different from Landmark.
I did when I was out in the Bay Area.
Yeah. Well, this is a different piece of the puzzle. But anyhow, when we started down this path, it was more about learning to feel the stuff that we really organized our life around not feeling, and rather than saying, hey, anger or fear is a bad thing, that's just part of the human experience, inescapable. Okay, so we're all going to have the full ranging gamut of emotions. You can't avoid not being angry. You can't avoid, and typically in our society we have it that you go to a counselor, you take some drugs to suppress that, because we don't want to have to be with these feelings.
When you suppress things, you are getting them stuck deeper into your bones and your cells, and every cell in your body is getting that message where everything needs to be actually expressed out. And
a
lot of detoxification is about like moving that energy out that's been stagnant, like swamp water inside you.
Sure. And we all have that. That's there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So that's part of the normal human experience, is having these full range of emotions. And I think one of the greatest skills, the greatest sort of attributes to develop in this life, is to become very facile with being able to have our full range of emotions. Okay. So rather than trying to avoid them, learning to feel, or just being with this stuff, because it's kind of like when you feel something, it disappears quickly afterwards. So if you go back to say, like when your first love and you broke up and you were heartbroken, how much pain that was, we think, oh, is it going to go on forever? It doesn't. It just, eventually you've kind of felt there's a finite amount of things to be able to feel through. And then you're living and you're on the other side of it. And then you have that clarity. It's like, oh, okay, I can see. And then the next relationship you get into is completely different, because now you have, you felt your way through things, and there's just other things to learn. Life is like that, with whatever you endeavor upon. And so,
but there's a lot of conditioning to keep us in this modality of not feeling our feelings, and in doing so, you're cutting yourself off from, like, almost like I always like to say, it's like wisdom being it's percolating up, for like that anxiety is trying to tell you something, like the subconscious is bringing all this information up. And as like Ram Dass kind of says, like at first, these emotions come to you and they buckle you in the bathtub, but eventually you invite them in for tea and you're like, hey, have a seat. Tell me what you're trying to tell me. Like, I'm curious. You don't spook me anymore like the boogeyman. First, you were annihilatory, but now these feelings have visited me so many times in my life and are probably going to visit me again. I might as well be curious about them and try to listen a little deeper to what maybe is trying to be revealed to me. There's maybe some benefit from checking in.
Yeah. So I found when I took the phone, it was like 2008, 2009 when I met this guy, and then kind of a different set of mentors or people to go through life with. My life just started to accelerate. So I was working in software sales, big corporation, SAP, one of the, they're kind of like Oracle. They're huge, big Fortune 100 company. And, making a very good income, but I hated my job. I hated going to work in the morning. It's funny. I was living on the water, on the beach in Vancouver, downtown Vancouver, could have a view of the sunset in the ocean, and I was miserable. Could go around Stanley Park on rollerblades, and it was like, people say, hey, you made it. And I was like, no, I'm just not happy here.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that the questions I had was, and I had no medical background. I had an interest in healthcare, but I had said, this was in 08, 09. No, it was a little bit after that. We about probably 11 now at this point, 11, 12. And I had been persistently asking this question is, well, how can I be of service? I've done a whole bunch of different things in life. I know I have greater potential, but how can that start to come out in this world? And really what it was, how do I clear enough space around my heart for the expression? Now, I had no idea I was going to get into healthcare, not a clue. And I was working with a mentor at the time, and he says, well, start off where you're at. Your work is just to go around and see how you can be of service to people where you're at immediately and be a reflection of that. And if you do that really well, maybe the universe will come and pick you up and use you as a tool somewhere else, or give you another job, right? And so I used to go around my office, and I would start asking people, is there anything I can do for you? For a woman, for a guy to come up and ask him randomly, is there anything, is very strange, right? It was like, well, usually it's no, but well, thank you for asking, that's kind of, and I go around to my manager saying, hey, how can I make your life easier? What can I do for you? And so I was just a demonstration, even though I didn't want to do it. It was like, oh man, no, I just give me the answer sort of thing. But I had to be right with where I'm at right now, be thankful, grateful for the job. Anyhow, I said, hey, check this guy out. And that's where I got connected with Dr. Morris. And I just had this hit of energy. It was like this intuition, right? This intuitive, hey, there's maybe something there. So I, 6 months to get an appointment with him. And then I did that, and I was like, wow, this is really amazing stuff. And so I said, well, no one's really doing this sort of work in Western Canada, or anywhere that I've heard of for that matter. So I flew down, went down to Florida, just started training with him, got a cell phone number. And, because one thing I know about really successful people is you think, well, they have no time. But if you can approach them from the place of what can I do to make your life better, or make it easier? If you go into, you could even do this with Tony Robbins. Like if you become like this person who brings this other piece of value in an area that they don't have in life, and I guarantee you, Tony Robbins will have pieces of life that he hasn't got figured out yet, where he'd love to have some clarity on it. Not that I'd want to work with him necessarily, but you know what I'm saying? You could approach them, and if you were willing to do that for a person, they'll let you in, and you can learn some amazing stuff from working with them.
Yeah.
Because you're doing that. Most people think, well, there's no time. Why would they ever work with me? So anyhow, I got this guy's cell phone number, and I started calling him all the time on the cell phone, and he got to know my clients, and I started to work with him I came back to Vancouver and I said, well, maybe this has some legs. So I started, no medical background. I took some courses, obviously. I took on herbalism, but I'd taken a course with him in Florida. And I had a background in public speaking and coaching. I worked with people from a coaching perspective. So I just started doing talks, not really knowing what I was doing. And I do meetup groups and community centers, groups of like 20, 30 people. And people eventually would come up to me at the end of the session and say, wow, that's brilliant what you're teaching. Can you help me out with this condition? I've been to my naturopath, I've been to my doctor, they can't help me out. And I really like what you have to say. And I'd pick them up with clients and I'd be with Florida. I'd be, on the job training where I'd be talking with my mentors down in the States, how to work with this person, looking at their blood work, having to do the dietary stuff with their protocol for medicinal herbs. And I was originally getting stuff from the United States. And then gradually, little by little, I started getting really great results with people where I work with them. They'd be able to come off pharmaceutical medications. I can't legally take someone off of that, but if they improve their body to the point where they don't need to do it, then they can come off of it. And so, and then I had a client in Alberta who had a brain tumor, and they actually passed that out. They actually passed that out, and he'd already been looking at a lot of the Dr. Morse stuff, and he was just really intrigued that I was the only practitioner that he knew who did that. But he got rid of his cancer as a developer, and he was in the East Indian community. Pretty soon he started telling me about to all his friends. And before you know it, I have hundreds of Indo-Canadian clients and Indian American, or was it in the United States, they call it Asians of Indian descent, I think it's called, that I'd be working with, and with cancer and all sorts of conditions. So kind of magical. Now, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, would you ever be getting into healthcare? I'd say, no way, I can't even imagine that. And, next thing you know, I've got this full-fledged practice and business where, you're working with people, with doctors sometimes. I do talks in hospitals occasionally. So where I go to, Vancouver General Hospital or Surrey Memorial in Vancouver and doing talks, and there'll be MDs in the audience, outrageous, right? How could that be that someone from a sales background could be working in that radical a shift in life? And I can now see that it had to do with just connecting and starting to listen and pay attention. And
very quickly, this thing just got laid.
Yeah. So life can open up in very extraordinary ways that way. Way grander than you could ever imagine. But it wasn't so much, an idea coming from my head, because I think a lot of,
and it wasn't on a loudspeaker. It was like very subtle listening to like these nudges from you.
Yes.
Drop into this, follow this, just do this, just pick up the phone.
Well, we have things like remember the movie The Secret, right? Rhonda, I can't remember her name, but it had Reverend Michael Beckwith, and they had the Conversations with God guy.
Throw a poster on the wall, and it'll
Jack Canfield. I think was it John DeMartini might have been. I can't remember if he was or not. But anyhow, in that movie they say, well, do a vision board, right? So you have, and then people have the big house and the Ferrari and that sort of stuff.
Yeah, I put it away in a box, and then next thing you know, I moved into that exact house and got that exact car because I visioned driving that car.
Yeah. And what I'm talking about is throw all that away, get rid of that, because rather than something that's coming from your head, that's like an idea of, John's idea of what you'd like. I'm saying it's like, how about what the universe wants to come through me? So rather, like my mind is like a pocket calculator. You could say the universe is like a supercomputer.
Right.
And the more you can get tapped into that, you're downloading stuff that's way grander than you're connected with stuff that's way grander than you could possibly imagine in life. A lot more firepower, for what you want to produce. Buckminster Fuller talks about that. If you ever watched Buckminster Fuller, some of his original videos. And this guy is an extraordinary guy, you know, Harvard grad. He had honorary doctorates all over the world. And, you know, he's friends with Henry Ford, with Dale Carnegie. And he spent like 3 years, I think it was self-examining all the stuff in his head that's not even true, and letting that go. And look at the, you know, we designed the most efficient car in the world in the 1930s. Of course, it crashed in the trials, the Damaxian, and some people died, but in the trials. But, you know, I think he had interest from like the Rothschilds and the, you know, the Carnegies. And then he designed the most efficient house. And then, of course, the thing that finally hit was the geodesic dome, you know, where he'd actually designed that, and that got patented all over the world. But interesting guy, he never owned a house or property until he's almost in his 60s. You know, extraordinary guy. But he talks about that, which is kind of getting tuned into your higher self, you know, kind of creating that sort of space to have that sort of expression come out in the world. So that's what I'm talking about or referring to here is,
and let's talk about referring, and let's talk about attunement, and speaking to an audience about, you know, the work that you're doing in the world. Like if they wanted to get a hold of you in the world, you know, and the work that you're doing, whether, you know, I understand you've got an incredible herbal product line that you're very passionate about these days, and the work that you do with clients is helping people connect in with their highest self, help them tap into, you know, the super calculator versus your little pocket calculator.
Sure.
Would be maybe a quick summary of things. But like, how would people get a hold of you, Jon? Like, what would be, you know, if they wanted to just kind of peer into your world and look at what you're up to in the world, and come to some type of conclusion to get off the fence and pick up the phone and just have a conversation with you, what would that look like?
Well, I have my health website, which is www.painfreehappylife.com, so they can go on and look. You know, some of the health stuff is spectacular. Some of the pieces of awareness that so simple, that, you know, they're like blind spots, but they're obvious, right? You see them and you're like, wow, how come I've never learned that from a doctor or naturopath or homeopathic doctor? So there's that on my website around the health stuff. And then for the coaching stuff, so I have clients that I work with on all sorts of issues or goals, more is probably the best way, for more of a life coaching aspect. So they can contact me, and I can have a conversation with that if someone's interested in going that way. And so my contact information is all there on the website, so people can go and check that out. So.
Great. Well, I know you and I'll definitely invite you back, because you and I could have lots more in-depth conversations, and we'll do that. I think today is just a nice teaser for people about what you're about in the world, and obviously, you know, I feel that, I'm sure our audience feels it, that you're someone that is tapped in. It takes time to self-examine, takes time to listen at a deeper level when you're with people about what's going on, and having that a great deal of curiosity to investigate and ask the hard questions, and not take things at such a face value, and knowing that, you know, we're all kind of stringed together by these, you know, these conditionings throughout our lifetimes, and sometimes it can be scary for us to start to unravel this, and that maybe that drink or that smoke has been working for you and has been a great ally in the meantime, but there's a desire within you to know that there's maybe something better, or maybe another path.
But by the way, I'm not promoting cigarette smoking, by the way. It's more of, you know, like I'm just saying is that it's easier to change something, or to have something shift coming from the place that we are not struggling or fighting or resisting that. With that's all. I'm all for people, you know, feeling better, you know, having more energy, having more vitality, you know, having more pleasure in life. I do experiments with people. You know, there's a lady I worked with, and, you know, one of her piece of homework was to take time off work and go gardening and painting, because I knew she liked those. And you know, that actually solved her pain issues. and with the levels. And so, you know, we sometimes work on things from a whole different angle, and yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool, pretty cool.
Yeah, rather than trying to like remove things necessary, maybe it's finding like what would really, you know, light you up, what would actually really enhance your life. What how could your, you know, how could Jon come into your life and help make something better? How could he help you with getting some freedom, some peace, take you off of a miserable beach and figure out what would create you know, create a different experience for you, one that's more in alignment of why you're here, why you're maybe what you've been up to has been great, and now it's not so great now, and what's next? What would shine some more light onto a path that's being called forth for you, or you're going to continue to experience some of these symptoms. You know, maybe the symptoms are, it's a good thing. Maybe these symptoms, you wouldn't listen unless there were some of these symptoms. You know, I've had to, you know, sometimes I've listened to the whispers, and sometimes I've, you know, listened to the knocks, and sometimes, you know, it's taken a baseball bat to the knees for me to get my attention and stubbornness to explore a different, you know, different possibility for myself, the one that was more authentic, more aligned with what I'm here for, and why I have this capacity. So we all have like these extraordinary capacities, and it's because we, you know, maybe there's more for us. I think Jon's someone that would be great to connect with if you're looking to really try to investigate, you know, an aspect of yourself that maybe has been blocked off for a bit. And I see you as kind of, not to quote Ghostbusters, but, you know, here's the keymaster. So you definitely are someone that can help people, you know, unlock things for themselves that sometimes, you know, I always tell people it's sometimes really hard to see that thing that's next to you. Sometimes you need someone beside you that can point out that thing. You know, I always make jokes about that video with if you ever look it up online, where the gal's got a nail in her head.
Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah, yeah.
Take the nail out. But anyways, I hope this conversation was helpful for folks, and it was always great just being able to spend time with you, Jon, and hanging out and having a conversation, and we'll have more. But I just want to say thank you, brother, and thank you to everybody for listening in, and we'll see you soon.
Cool deal.
Okay, see you, everybody. Bye-bye.